I birthed my son in June of 2019 alongside midwife-led unit at our local hospital. I was 41 and a half weeks pregnant, and it is the place that I'd hoped to birth. My top 3 tips would be: number 1, plan. I think birth plans can be quite divisive. Some people say don't bother planning. For me, having a plan was really empowering, with the caveat that perhaps plan, and when you're planning, think of the things that you can control, and the things that you absolutely cannot control, and the things that you have some influence over. So you don't tie yourself up in knots trying to plan for something which ultimately you can never control. Planning for me allowed me to communicate with my midwives and the medical team what was really important to me, and being able to articulate those things on regular occasions to different people really helped my experience on the day, because people knew about my previous experience, they knew about what was important to me, and they were able to support me in achieving the birth that I had hoped for, because everyone was bought into the plan. So planning is my first tip. My second tip is practice. So if you are using hypnobirthing, then practice your breathing, your affirmations. And I got into a routine where I had a bath every night with my aromatherapy blend. I would listen to my audios, I would repeat my affirmations in an environment, in a candlelit bathroom, in an environment which was similar to the environment I hoped to birth in, so that on the day, actually, the birthing experience felt already quite familiar and comfortable, and the smells and the sights and the sounds were already very familiar to me. So being able to practice those things meant that on the day they came much more easily to me. So I think practicing was really important. My third tip is access support. So the transition from conception to pregnancy to birth and postnatally should not be underestimated, and there is support out there. Oftentimes the hardest bit is knowing where to look and then making the first step to accessing support. But there are people who care and people who have the knowledge and experience to support your transition to parenthood. And don't be afraid to ask, because it is a momentous transition. So gaining support where you need it is so important. I feel an immense sense of pride when I think about the hours after his birth. We were in the room, just the 3 of us. I was holding him, staring into his eyes and feeding him and cuddling him and keeping him warm. And I was able to reflect and be proud of the journey that I had been on from my daughter's birth, which was very challenging, and where I didn't have those very important hours immediately after birth, because I had been taken away for surgery. So to have that time after his birth and to have achieved the birth that I so hoped for, and that I had found my voice and been able to articulate what it was I wanted, and to conquer some of my fears and to empower myself with the knowledge that I needed to be able to birth him and to be able to rewrite my story of birth was really important. And it took a lot to reach out and say, I need help, I need support, and to overcome those demons and to face birth again with a renewed sense of positivity and strength that I was able to find. And I was held in that space, and I was supported and cared for, and I'd overcome so much that those hours after birth, where it was just the 3 of us, I felt immense pride. There are two things that I would consider doing differently if I were to birth again. The first is having a birth photographer. I would really like to have documented the expressions and the emotion and the power of my son's birth, and to have a birth photographer there, which at one point I would have said was maybe frivolous or additional. Now I would look at a birth with a birth photographer as really part of that birth, to be able to capture those moments of power and to capture those images of love which become so blurred after the event. The second thing I would consider changing would be cutting the umbilical cord. So my husband had cut the cord of my daughter, and he did for my son, and that was in the plan. But I would consider cutting it myself as a final act of severing the pregnancy and starting a new life. It's really symbolic of setting your child free into the world, having nurtured them and grown them for such a long time. So I would consider just challenging that idea that it is the man's honour to be able to cut the cord, and to do it as his mother, to have cut his cord. My favourite moment from my son's birth was the few minutes when his head had emerged and I could see his face, where I was able to really take a breath, slow down, and realise that I was in this momentary transition between him being inside and him being outside. And because of the way he was positioned, I could see his face, and it was the first time I'd seen it. And I was able to relax in that moment, knowing that the rest of him would follow and he would be born, and it was just moments away. But I think it was really special to have that time, even though it was fleeting, to kind of drink him in when he was still inside. It was really special.